And during the few moments that we have left, we want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Have you said in your heart that you will sit on the Mount of Assembly? Have you said in your heart that you will ascend above the heights of the clouds? That is a cult of personality. Straight from Isaiah chapter 14. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rapture, Ruckus, where we cover the rapture in the news. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. We are your hosts, Joe Muzidla and Matthew Miller. It is good to be with you once again this week. We have the rapture coming up in the news repeatedly. I want to start in this place right here, but before we do that, let's get Joe's cadoos for the week. Joe, how's it been going this week?
Not too bad. Very, very busy week, but good. It was good.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. We've had a pretty good week here. Let's get straight away to the rapture news. This just completely blew me away, Joe, that, well, technically today, even though it's after midnight, so this is the 12th, but on Thursday, it came out in Channel 2 News in Reno that Soto's, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, S-O-T-O, Soto, has out a new book, The Rapture, Fiction or Reality. Is the author's passionate plea with fellow Christians should change their ways and make ready to meet the Lord. This is absolutely off the charts, how? Well, I'm going to give you a direct quote right from it, and he sticks his foot squarely in his mouth. Direct quote from the author. I believe the rapture, though it seems a fictional concept. It is on its way to becoming a fact that will rock the core of all days. Those ready will be part of an exclusive group of believers chosen by the Lord himself. I just was blown away. Joe, how does a rapture book get on the local news television station in Reno? It absolutely boggles my mind. And that quote from the author itself is just off the charts to me. Just to come out, tell you up front that it in fact is a fictional concept, by the way. I just didn't know what to say. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that's definitely a foot in mouth. First he comes out and says that it's fictional, but it will be proved true, which I don't know how those two go together at all. What is fictional is fictional, and what is true is what is true. So that first statement makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And for it to make the news, the only thing I can think of is just, I was in prayer today for the people affected by Hurricane Michael. And, just across the world, we have cataclysm after cataclysm as far as weather or earth-related activities, devastating civilization right now. So I think, unfortunately, this brings about a perfect opportunity to make money, is the only thing that comes to my mind.
Well, I don't know what else could come to your mind, to be perfectly honest with you. I see no other rhyme or reason to this, which is just the way it is. I mean, sometimes that's just what you have to say. This is just the way it is, and it really is. But it is disturbing to me that they throw this on Channel 2 News. I mean, you realize that he could not pay. Well, let's ask ourselves these questions. Joe, if he was going to pay somebody to promote his book, I am sure you're probably kind of aware that in a city like Reno, if you was to do this during rush hour traffic, you'd probably be talking about, $10,000 for like a 30-second spot. Yet, he got an entire news article for free from Channel 2 News. And nobody puts two and two together. What's going on with that? They don't realize how expensive advertising really is. And he just got the best advertisement possible for free, with no rhyme and reason why they would do this for him. And it just stretches way into that concept that everybody knows it, and it's been true for a while, about fake news. And one thing that really bothers me is I remember Hurricane Katrina. And this is the truth, Joe. Since Hurricane Katrina, me and my wife have taken notice that they haven't been able to predict the weather. It's gotten so bad here that, I'll give you an example, we watch this on a daily basis. They said the high today was going to be 42. Well, at that exact time, because it happens to be during my lunch break, they said the high today was 42 for 3 o'clock. Well, at 3 o'clock, I promptly checked my phone, and it was 48 degrees. They do this continually. Literally, me and my wife, and I've had my wife do it, just check the news every hour and see what happens, and take screenshots. And from the morning, 3 hours will pass, and all of a sudden we're getting rain. They literally, in the morning, cannot predict what's going to accurately happen in the afternoon. And historically, Joe, you and I both remember, we remember our childhood. You really could plan 3 days out. If you were going to do something for the weekend, you could check the weather forecast Friday night, and it would be correct. It would not rain, let's say, the next 2 days. Let's just talk about this forecast now. This week they've changed it so badly because we were supposed to get 9 inches by today. And as the day progressed, we got to Monday, they changed it. Tuesday, they changed it. And of course, by Wednesday, everybody was like, well, you obviously didn't know what you were talking about. It's not snowed any of the 3 days you said it was going to snow. And that's how bad it is predicting the weather. And people just don't take note of it. They don't write it down. They don't make record. And me and my wife do. The simple fact that 20 years ago, back when we were married, you could easily plan your weekend off the weather. You can't anymore. You really can't. Have you noticed that yourself as time progressed? But me and my wife, as far as we remember, it actually began to get chaotic right about Hurricane Katrina. But have you noticed that to be the case?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Where I'm at, I've been here the entirety, of my life. So I've seen it. It's not even the same state anymore. Normally, well, even the leaves, not even all the leaves have changed yet. And that's not normal. I still have trees in certain areas that are still green, which is...
Well, I can trump you. I can absolutely trump you. Everything in my yard is green. I have green grass. I have green leaves on the trees. And, buddy, I am more than a stone's throw farther north than you.
Right.
And everything's still green, and it just blows me away.
Yep. No, I have the exact same thing. I was waiting for, the higher elevation changed, of course, but usually the lower elevation where I'm at, not super low, but lower than the foothills or the mountains, just maybe about 45-minute hour drive from where I'm at. That'll change a little sooner, and then shortly after, we're not far behind, but it's been weeks in between now, and then just over the course, like today, for example, the prediction was, I believe, 48 degrees and afternoon shower, and we didn't get a shower until I was actually on my way home tonight from work. So,
well, you realize that all this stems from the barometric pressure. And people don't realize, unless they've taken meteorology, which I have. I took it in an institution of higher learning. And people don't realize that weather is determined off the barometric pressure. And that's why I have one. It's not 2 feet from me right now. I can look up and see it. And I literally see it move back and forth. Now, this one is one of the old ones. It actually is a real barometric pressure gauge because it has, of course, human hair in it. It has human hair, so it's real. The electronic ones, ladies and gentlemen, you can't trust that. But what I've seen, if that was to be seen 100 years ago, they would literally freak out because you understand that the barometric gauge, historically, it takes it. Well, it does its progression over a day. It will slowly rise and slowly go down very, very, very slowly. And that's how you can predict the weather 3 days out, because it will start to rise. If the barometric pressure is on the rise, it usually takes it about 24 hours to set in, which will induce rain. Joe, I've sat here over the afternoon and watched it go back and forth 3 times. And that's a fact. And I don't know if I've ever shared this publicly, but this is a replacement for my other one, because the original one I did have, and we couldn't buy this one new. This replacement was bought off eBay because you can't. It's extremely hard to find an actual barometric gauge. There's only one way to do it. That's like the old clock. It's got to have arms with a levature that's attached to human hair. The electronic ones, that's fake. That's fake. But now I'm going to say something that's going to shock you, and you've probably never heard this before. But the first year that we relocated, actually into the wilderness. I mean, this is the only state that has 3 nationally recognized wildernesses. So literally, I come to the wilderness. But I think it was 4 months after we moved here that the hair in the barometric gauge broke. It broke in 2. So, believe me when that startled I and my friends as I passed the word along to old college roommates. They were really disturbed by that. Because, you can get antique barometric pressure gauge because they don't go bad.
Right.
So, your thoughts on that? Did you know that that's why the news is having such a hard time predicting the weather, is because the barometric pressure? Did you know that?
No, I did not, to be honest with you. I knew that there would have to be some fluctuation within that, and then that made me think about the high cases of, at least affecting on a human level of, seems that we've had a lot more cases of arthritis.
That's right. Due to the joints. The pressure displayed on the joints, yes, you're exactly correct. And some disturbing things about that. Let me just ask you, do you know the status of most people that need hip replacements? Do you know that they are told they're forced to wait until their retirement years to have a hip replaced? Just take note. You can go to groups. Now, you don't know this because this is all done privately in private groups, but you can get Facebook groups like my wife did, and there's poor women that are in their 30s in a wheelchair, and their surgeon refuses to do the hip replacement until they get to be 65 or 60,
No, I
67,
have.
whatever.
Yeah, I do have. My wife worked in the medical community for quite a few years, and so we kind of, we do have some contacts within that. So yeah, I've heard story after story. Yeah.
And let me ask you something. When you were small, let's say up until the time you were 12 years old, was that the case?
No.
No, it was not, Joe.
Mm-mm.
It absolutely was not the case. And another thing, Joe, you realize we've gotten to the point where everybody dies pretty much of one of two things. It's either cancer or a heart attack, stroke type of thing, right?
Right.
How often did that happen when we were young?
That was pretty rare.
Here. Let me ask you this. Let me rephrase that. When was the first time you heard of someone dying of cancer that you knew of? Yeah, Joe. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, that wasn't until my 20s or 30s.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. You realize we came here, and here we actually had a 20-year-old boy who was engaged to, I think she was 22. They both got cancer at the same time. Just off the charts. But yeah, people don't realize what's going on in the world around them because, well, they've pretty well entertained themselves to death at this point. But yeah, I know intimately what you're talking about, the weather chaos, and of course I used to cover that a lot. And here, as of late, it has been getting out of control. It has been becoming off the rails. But a lot of people just, well, they don't care, do they, Joe?
No.
They really don't care. Let's talk a little bit about the entertainment industry, coming at this from two different ways. This was published, let me take a look, October the 7th. This is the headline, former USC safety Kevin Elson dies at 31. Now, you wouldn't expect the Rapture to be in here, but the reason why he was fired from the team was because of arson. And what I'm going to say is probably going to rattle your cage. Elson told Shock General Manager Ryan Rigmaiden that he was Jesus Christ and that he was part of the Rapture, and that God told him to start the fire, Hamid said. He did not believe it. The fire was going to harm him because God told him he would protect him. And Elson told him that he started the fire with his marijuana blunt. He set his own bed on fire, and he thought that when he caught fire, that was going to trigger the Rapture. And that is just off the charts. When I seen this, I could absolutely not believe it, but that was not his end of days. That's just the arson that got him fired from playing football. This is what it describes. It says, Chris Ellison said his brother was walking along a freeway in the San Fernando Valley at the time of his death. He was disoriented and didn't know where he was at. Chris Ellison told the Los Angeles Times, I'm sure he was trying to come home and find his family. Now, the article says no cause of death was listed, but he obviously jumped in front of some traffic. I would imagine is what the cause of death was. So this is another one, very disturbing. And I'm sorry we have to talk about this, Joe, but we do.
Right.
What was it? 2 weeks ago we talked about, or was it 3 weeks ago? I can't remember which. We talked about the gentleman that had convinced his wife to commit suicide so that he could build Rapture bunkers with the... Now, how much money was it that he was going to get from that, Joe? I forget.
1.4 million.
1.4 mil. 1.4 mil. This is just as tragic. We have this gentleman here that was obviously good at what he did. No doubt about that. And he lost touch with reality. Obviously got tied up with some drugs. Of course, everybody preaches there's nothing wrong with marijuana. But that is beside the point. And it amazes me that, well, everything that happened, everything that terminated his sports career was due directly to the rapture. He actually told people that he was living with that the fire wasn't going to actually hurt him. The fire was going to trigger the rapture. So, your thoughts, Joe?
Wow, that is definitely a psychosis. That one takes me by surprise, to be honest with you. I can't even get my mind to even fathom that thought of starting a fire to instigate what you would think, what this individual was thinking was going to happen. I'm having a hard time just wrapping my mind around that, to be honest.
Well, it is kind of hard to wrap your mind around. Let's move to the next one this week that just makes me shake my head because the day after that, October the 8th, we got this from Splice Today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you know anything about journalism, you'll readily come to the simple fact that Splice is not a Christian organization. That's an understatement. That's absolutely an understatement. But they did an article up, Render Unto Caesar What is Caesar's? And it's about Pastor Shirley Caesar. And as I read it, I was just blown away. It says here that she has never, as far as I can determine, recorded any non-religious music. That comment limited her commercial potential in comparison to Aretha or even Mavis Staples, for example. But within gospel, she has tremendous range, as well as sermons. She's recorded many songs featuring suffering and loving mothers, prodigal sons, financial and health problems, ecstatic overcoming, love of God, and the impending rapture. It just amazes me why Splice would do an article up on a supposed Christian pastor, and to have Splice label her as the Queen of Gospel. Tied in with this, I just love this Antichrist headline: "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's," because that's her last name. Her name is Shirley Caesar. I know a lot about Splice and their Antichrist activities. But here they go all out, just to, promote Shirley Caesar. And I found it to be rather shocking and disturbing as to why they're even writing about a pastor. I couldn't figure out what on earth was going on, but to use Splice today to promote the rapture was just off the charts. But that's exactly what they did. To have Splice equate someone with Aretha Franklin is really off the charts. To have Splice say that this preacher rivaled Mavis Staples is, you're like, what? I mean, I am reading this correctly, right? This is from Splice Today. Yes, it is. So you might as well be reading this out of, I don't know, Rolling Stone or something. So, your thoughts, Joe?
This is like a magazine, or?
Yes, it's a magazine. Like
Okay.
I said, it's about like Rolling Stones, but it's, you'd have to do your own research. Believe me when I say it's the exact opposite of Christianity today. Let's just say that.
So it's the exact opposite of Christianity, promoting a singer that they're, equating to some of the greats, as we would call them, of singing, and then promoting a rapture. I've seen. It's kind of weird. I've seen a mix of that with the secular media, either promoting this or basically bashing it. It seems to be there's nothing in between. They sway one way or the other on it. But yeah, I personally, I've never heard of Splice myself. But to compare it to the Rolling Stone, then I get it. I've heard of that one and have seen a couple articles out of there and have pretty much stayed away from it. But wow, I think that should start giving hints and clues to this teaching. To me, it should start being a huge slap in the face or a wake up call that this isn't real.
No, look, it's obviously not, and it's obviously being perpetuated in the entertainment industry. There's just no way around it, Joe. There is absolutely no reason for Splice Today, and certainly not Channel 2 News Reno, to be promoting the Rapture. There's just not. It doesn't make any sense unless there's something ulterior at play. Something is not right. It's just not right. And that's what gets you down to the core, is you realize, look, this is just more than books and movies. Look, Joe, are you going to see any type of movie like Left Behind? Are you going to see any of that about the Apostle Paul? No. Let's say Mary. Are they going to make a movie like Left Behind? Now this is Hollywood. This is Hollywood. Make a movie with that much money, throw everything they've got at it for, let's say, the first martyr, Stephen. No, that's never going to happen. Not ever.
Nope.
And that should bother Christians, and it amazes me as to why it don't. Why do you think that is? Why do you think this does not bother people?
Oh, goodness. I I think because they're so attached to this teaching, that they'll defend it. I mean, unfortunately, to the end. It seems for some that no matter what, I've listened or read a couple of articles, and then there was one pastor. I think I gave him a whole 20 seconds to listen to his rant of if someone is saying that the rapture isn't true, then they're deliberately attacking the church and they're attacking the Bible, and we know that we're coming into the end time because they're attacking us. And so they kind of they twist it to make it seem as though they're being martyred or persecuted because of this belief, but it's nowhere near that. It's people that are actually going, no, this isn't true. There's nothing about it that makes sense. There's nothing about it that's true. But as far as it not being bothersome, my mind goes back to, I don't know when that was done. I was just shocked that it was done the way it was. It was, or they used the actor Nicolas Cage. Quite a famous actor it was a Rapture movie. I don't remember what it was called, and then I was curious because he's never come out as a professing Christian or anything like that. So I was curious why he would take a role like that. And then I looked up that he was, in trouble with the IRS. So then, it all made sense. It was once again about perpetuating a lie and, filling up a wallet, basically.
Basically, you come back to the same conclusion, don't you?
Yep.
I mean, that just blows me away, but we've got to cover this because when the Orthodox get into the mix, ladies and gentlemen, when Kabod.org gets into the mix with the Rapture, there's problems. But this article came out on the 9th, and, it is impregnated into this article on Kabod.org. If you don't know, that is CHABAD.org. It's from an Orthodox Jewish site. And the name of the article is The Three Stages of Creation, Covenant and Conversation. Well, they really put a hammering in this phrase, and I will just read this paragraph. It comes via 3 sentences. Perhaps this is what the phrase comes to teach us, that the religious life is not to be sought in retreat from the world and its conflicts into mystic rapture or nirvana. God wants us to be part of the world, fighting its battles, tasting its joy, celebrating its splendor. Well, that is an understatement, actually. Ladies and gentlemen, he actually said it quite correctly, because that is what the Bible, God's holy word, says emphatically, and it says that it is, very bad to want to be raptured into the clouds and go to heaven. That's actually bad. That's actually from Isaiah chapter 14. And that's not at all what God did with Noah, even though I amusingly hear rapture promoters use Noah as an example for the rapture, even though that's exactly the opposite of what happened. God prepared a place for him. That's pretty well exactly did. He gave him the exact dimensions, told him to pitch it within and without, how many decks to put on it, the whole 9 yards, and then God shut the door. That really happened. Noah didn't shut the door to the ark. God did. And they go topsy-turvy and say that this is a version of the rapture when it obviously is exactly the opposite. But this Jewish article is quite correct. That's exactly what God has written. And that's why the Orthodox know this, because they don't have the New Testament, ladies and gentlemen. No, they study the Old Testament. And the Old Testament doesn't say anything different. And repeatedly, in every scripture there is, having the thought to ascend unto the Mount of Assembly is extremely bad. There's nothing good associated with it at all. So it just blew me away that I got some of my Jewish friends' attention, and they thought that they would display some humor and throw the rapture into the mix. And I appreciate their sentiments. And yes, you're welcome for those equations that I sent you on the divine ratio. But I'm not going to mention your name. So, Joe, your thoughts on a definitively Orthodox website mentioning the rapture and equating it to nirvana, directly tying it into Gnosticism and other flavors of Eastern mysticism, which clearly stated in the article, and let me do this direct quote as far as that's concerned. We do not believe that this created world of the senses of evil. To the contrary, we believe that it is the arena of blessing and good. That is a Jewish way of curse slamming you, Joe, if you believe in a rapture or nirvana. And they're very politically correct and very articulate with how they put it, and they will say it, and you won't even have the wherewithal to realize that they're saying very bad things about you, and they're just reiterating the simple fact that if you have these thoughts, they are not coming from Scripture. They can't be. Your thoughts on that, Joe?
Well, I'm glad that they weighed in on it. I don't know how many would, like you said, the way they put that. I don't know how many would actually catch that as they were making light of that story, the Rapture story. But I'm actually quite glad that they did weigh in on that, and the way that they did it was, it was perfect. They did an excellent job.
Well, it really was. They stated it the way that it is, and then without coming and saying it, they basically said, "This is evil, by the way. It's evil." And God made, and it just blows me away. Look, ladies and gentlemen, if it's one thing that the Jews know with all of their heart, is that God went through all the trouble to make creation for his children. Now look, I don't know why you believe something else. I really don't. But he did not make creation for the Rockefellers, for the Rothschilds, for the rich and the wealthy. I'm sorry. He did not. He made it for God-fearing, Bible-believing, gospel-preaching Christians, actually. Now, in the beginning, if one had not been seeking and one had not been deceiving, we wouldn't be in this mess, and we would really be experiencing God on a daily basis. He would literally come down, and just like you do when you get home from work, Joe, where do you go first?
Wife.
That's right. And all of you with kids, straight to the kids. And that's a fact, and that really is how God wanted it. It really is. He really did want to come down in the cool of each and every day and hang out, check out our progress. Well, what'd you do today? That's exactly what he wanted to do. It was never his intention to do anything else. And it's only an evil thought that would think that this creation has been designed for, wickedness run amok. That's absolutely diametrically opposed to everything the Bible has ever said. So I do appreciate this. And I appreciate how the article goes on to, in a very politically correct way, say what happens and gives experiences therein. I will read this, and unfortunately it's going to echo back to this tragic tale of this football player. In the course of my work, I have visited prisons and centers for young offenders. Many of the people I met were potentially good. They, like you and me, had dreams, hopes, ambitions, aspirations. And they did not want to become criminals. Their tragedy was that often they become dysfunctional families in difficult conditions. No one took the time to care for them, support them, teach them how to negotiate the world, how to achieve what they wanted through hard work and persuasion rather than violence and law-breaking. They lacked the basic self-respect, a sense of their own worth. No one ever told them they were good. This was a very politically polite way of saying that he has experience with this type of mindset. And he did a very good job of painting it in the best way that he could without coming out and saying that this is a psychosis. That's what it is, and it's a very bad one. To think that God is going to abandon creation and leave it to the wicked. That is, that's just the opposite of what he designed it for. That's just the exact opposite of why he created everything. And yet that's what this, cunningly devised fable. There is only one epitaph for a belief in a rapture. And it is given to us by the Bible itself. A cunningly devised fable. But we had to cover this coming from an Orthodox website, absolutely off the charts. Joe, let me ask you this. You have searched for the Rapture chapter, correct? You spent some time looking for it?
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't have any success with that?
None.
I keep asking that question, and everybody I ask, they still say the same thing. Yeah, we're still looking for it. I thought you'd been a churchgoer your whole life. Oh yeah. But I still haven't found the Rapture chapter yet, because every time it mentions it, it says that, it basically happens at the same time as the resurrection, so it can't come when they're saying it's coming. That's actually at the end of the game, isn't it? Well, It's certainly not the end of the game. That's certainly not the end of the game, because we've got a 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ to go through before then. But yeah, that's basically when Jesus gets back, and that's pretty well common knowledge, that when he gets back is when everybody is risen, so they can be a part of the kingdom of heaven, which is actually on earth. Ladies and gentlemen, that's actually on earth. It's real. We're going to have a real kingdom with a real king, and that king is going to be Christ, and he's going to dictate the entire planet. That's really going to happen. That is the kingdom of heaven. So it amazes me how people lose sight of that and lose track of that, even though they know that. Even though all the scriptures say that, they lose track of it. And I can't seem to figure out how their thought process becomes so dysfunctional. Because, I've done this many times, and a lot of times just off the fly. Many times I've walked into a classroom of any of the varying ages, because I've taught all the age groups, and there's been several churches when they would make me do it by semester, the different classes, because, Well, all the age groups wanted me to be their teacher, but anyway, just walk into the classroom and say, pick a chapter, and have, a lady or a gentleman just throw one at me. Let's do one. Let's do, I don't know, Jeremiah chapter 13. And go through it. And you always hear the same thing. You always get this message that you're going to have a reckoning with God the Father. That's what it always says. He always says he's coming. He's going to gather us together. And he never changes from his diatribe. He always makes it perfectly clear that you're going to come face to face. You're going to have a reckoning day with me. And then after that day, things are really going to get bad for those people that are bad. But it's going to be just fine in a place that he's, prepared for us. That's what it always says. I can't seem to find any place where it says anything different. Do you have some places in Scripture where you're kind of out to lunch on? You don't know if it's good or bad or the otherwise, Joe?
As far as what God's going to do?
Yes.
No, I was just, thinking of the end from the beginning. And that's where my mind is really at the moment. I was thinking at the end of the millennial reign, when God the Father remakes new heaven, new earth, and comes down to basically reside. It just brings me, he says the end from the beginning, so it brings me screaming back to Genesis, to the garden.
Well, that's what it is, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John, I'm not trying to be facetious,
Mm-mm.
but that really is what he wants, and I don't know why people get confused about that. Ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what he means, the end from the beginning. In the end, God the Father really is going to come down just like he did in Genesis and walk with us and commune with us. He's going to be here physically, ladies and gentlemen. That really is what he means when he says you should know the end from the beginning. And if somebody tells you differently, they're lying, because, that's what God wanted. And I think that I have problems with understanding, and like I use that term dysfunctional, reiterating what my Jewish friend did there. That's true. That's true. If you read Genesis, the reason why he created all of this, the whole purpose was that he wanted to come down and enjoy his creation in the cool of each and every day. That he would take time out of his endless checklist. Ladies and gentlemen, if God doesn't do his work, all this comes undone. Don't you understand that? That you die. You die if you are ever separated from his thoughts. So he really did want to take time out every day and enjoy his creation. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you've been lied to about so many things. Like, let's take the ozone. Do you know what makes it work? You don't, do you? Let me ask you a better question. Now, I really do want you to do some homework before you listen to the next Rapture Ruckus. Do this. Explain to me, if you can, how water becomes saturated with oxygen. Because you're going to come to some very disturbing conclusions as you chase the tail of, Wikipedia and different scientific journals. It's going to become very disturbing because they're not going to tell you how water becomes saturated with oxygen. Because they can't. It is just because he wants it to be. Just because his thoughts are on you. That's it. And look up ozone. Riddle me this. Why, and more importantly, how, is it that at a certain altitude We have a gathering together of 3 oxygen molecules. What makes them cling together? Do you know? No, you don't know. And you can't know, because that's just what God said. That's just what he said. So that's just the way it is. That's just the fact of the matter. And he said that phrase in from the beginning, hoping that you would have the wherewithal to understand that's exactly what he meant. He wanted to enjoy his own creation, and he does kind of have the right to do that. And this is all kind of, well, just technicalities, just because he wants them to be more technical than he has to have them. Because he could have put it into this and just done away with it. God doesn't have to do anything, ladies and gentlemen. He really don't. And he never, ladies and gentlemen, God doesn't obey laws. He is the law. The law is whatever he wants. And that's why people hate his guts. That's why they hate him. That's why they want to escape the bema seat. They hate him because he is the judge, and you will do things his way and no other way, or else. So they hate him for that he is God. And they make up fanciful things nowadays, like once saved, always saved, or other various flavors of that same, well, rebellion. It's rebellion against his will. So, Joe, you're exactly correct. Your mind has to go there in that phrase. And let me ask you this. You know, it's very strange to hear someone that has been studying Bible eschatology to bring up the simple fact of that one phrase in the Bible, the end from the beginning, because I don't hear rapturists say that phrase very often. Where did you get that phrase from, actually, now that I think about it?
Where did I get that from? The Bible, from God himself.
I see. So do you hear other Bible eschatology teachers bring in that phrase often?
Not very often.
I see. That just caught me strangely all of a sudden. I just realized that I don't hear anybody else bringing up that simple fact that that's the way it is. It's only going to be done, the end from the beginning. So I find that pretty interesting that got my attention all of a sudden, and I got a feeling that's going to come into play here very soon. So, Joe, did you have any other issues you wanted to discuss here on Rapture Ruckus before we call the end of this episode?
No, like I said, I'm still bummed. I'm still, the article that you and I discussed in private, I am still on the hunt. I will find that. And I've been looking at some different blog sites of just different people, just to you look for different articles, and sometimes you come across different things. And there's a couple that they start off, where I got a little excited. One gentleman was getting pretty fed up with, he actually walked away from eschatology. He got pretty fed up with all the failed predictions. And then started studying for himself, and I was kind of excited because he started to see a couple different things that he had wrote on his blog, as far as Israel becoming a burdensome stone or a cup of trembling. And I got a little hopeful, but he still has a death grip on the rapture as I read down further. He's just at the point where he's basically just saying, I don't know, which is a better place than he used to sound like he was, but still, I think, just letting that go is immense. Is just let it go. He never needed it. And then actually, just start believing.
Well, he doesn't realize that, well, that's really the problem. He his mind is beginning to understand because he obviously reads the Bible and he just can't find what he's been programmed to believe it says.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be very, very upsetting. It actually reminds me of the stock footage from one of the generals from World War II. He did a video recording of the German people being forced to carry the cadavers to the burial site from the concentration camps.
Mm.
And you should take a look at it, Joe, because they were in such abject denial, Joe. They really only could have not known there were death camps because those German citizens did not want to believe it. They absolutely, right. And you could tell by the look on their faces that, that, ladies and gentlemen, you've been programmed to believe something that the Bible never said. And you have to do exactly what Joe stated. You have to start believing the Bible. And once you do, it's easy. Joe, it's not hard, is it, buddy? Because once you hear it, once you hear what he says, all of a sudden it echoes everywhere, don't it?
Yep. It
really does. It echoes everywhere. All of a sudden, everything starts making sense. And that's just surprising to me because twice this very week I've had in-depth conversations with people just like that. And I was very quiet, and they would ramble on, very upset, and it was so obvious to me. Well, I mean, more than one reasons because I've been trained to do this, but I was sitting there and they didn't realize that I was feeling sorry for them because they didn't realize that this had been done to them and they hadn't gotten to the angry part yet. But they're going to get there when they realize that, oh my goodness, this was done to me on purpose. This is an outright lie. God never said that. And matter of fact, the trigger for that anger usually comes when they realize that the whole purpose behind this was to get out of a reckoning day with God the Father. When they realize that, oh my goodness, God has stated that he's going to do a terrestrial incursion next, not Christ. Usually that's the trigger when all of a sudden they fly off the handle and they actually go through these stages of mourning. They become very, very, very angry, and then they become very, very, saddened, upset, but they will follow the same playbook, but that usually is the trigger for the anger part is when they realize that, oh my goodness, God himself is going to come down and set things in motion. And he said this repeatedly. He has said it repeatedly. So that's usually what does it, Joe. And it's not a good thing when you realize that, you were raised with propaganda. I don't know how other way to put that. Maybe you can think of a better way to put it, but there's no other way I can find to put it. It's propaganda literally on a biblical scale.
That's a good way of putting it.
And I'm going to have to mention some of my side work, but these people were very upset when I brought up the simple fact that the word you're talking about, I'm going to have to correct you. That is not G726. There's no pi in that word. That's a gamma. It's G724. And they called me a liar several times until they go ahead and take a look at the actual Greek verse. And they're sitting there looking for a pi and they can't find it in the word. And they, one of them put me on hold. Well, let me go get my hard copy. Well, they went and got their hard copy, and guess what? There it was, staring them in black and white. It is saying it's G726, but there's no pi in the word. Well, yeah, because this has been done on a biblical scale to you. I don't understand how that could... Well, you better understand this. No Christian ever owned that printing press. You have to understand that this was done by design. And, boy, they get upset, Joe. They really get upset when they realize that this word has been purposefully keyed to the wrong strong number. That'll really tick you off. It's then that you realize that no Christians did this to you. No Christian would do that. So, well, we are at the end of another Rapture Ruckus. It's been a good time. Unfortunately, this time we couldn't cover very comedic things. It was kind of a dire one again with this gentleman setting himself on fire because he thought he could trigger the rapture. That's just too bad. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give you all of Joe's formats and where you can get a hold of him and social networking sites. So, Joe, give it to us. Point blank range, both barrels, square in the chest, buddy.
Okay. All right. You can reach me, Facebook. It's joemuzydla.9, JOEMUZYDLA.9, on Twitter at jmuzydla, MUZYDLA. Also do, another podcast, which, hopefully try and get another one out this weekend for, ark building. We shall see, do a little more praying on that one, but and that one I just do, well, it's a metaphorical ark, eschatology, based on the 66 books, and it's basically just how's your securities as these times grow darker. I also have another podcast on another format, Cup of Joe, or Cup with Joe, excuse me. And that one, I get to, well, do a little bit of whatever the Lord throws at me on that one. So it's kind of an open format, but always Christian, and I try and support other ministries that the Lord puts in my path.
Well, you definitely got to have somebody on from Save the Storks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you.
Yeah, I'm working on that one. I'm working on that.
Yeah, you got to do that. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I can't believe he misquoted his own show. Let me just, it's Cup with a Cup with Joe. You're supposed to do this in the morning, on Saturday morning, or whatever your day off is during the week. You get up first thing, you get your cup of coffee and sit down and listen and have it with Joe. That's what you're supposed to do, a cup with Joe. So anyway, that's hilarious. You did not do that. As far as myself, I'm not worried about it. If you need to go get a hold of me, guess what? The Holy Spirit's going to put me at the end of your rope, just like he always does. That's what he designed me for, I think. So I'm not going to promote anything I have done or will do. All my hopes are set on what he's going to do, on what he wants done, on what he wants me to do with that grand design. And I hope that I get to see all these things come true. You know, ladies and gentlemen, reminds me of somebody who had their voice taken from them for a while. And then all of a sudden he could talk. And he praised what God had done. Well, I hope I kind of get the same thing. I hope my own eyes get to see and stand in his shadow. I really do. I hope that you go with me to, well, the Tabernacle of David and marvel after what he put into the Bible, telling you to extend it and pull your cords tighter and make the tent bigger. you're going to understand what he meant. You're going to understand that it's that very mechanism that's going to save your life. Because if he wanted this planet to fly apart, ladies and gentlemen, it would just fly apart and you would die. Because, well, he is above you. And he is no respecter of persons. He don't have to love you. And he never did. He never had to do anything. So, I hope my own eyes get to see everything those who raised me longed for. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, Rapture Ruckus signing off.